Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
Hello. Thanks for joining us on Mission Evolution. We're coming to you on X-Zone TV and Simul TV from our broadcast studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, bringing the latest evolutionary information from today's leading experts. This hour will explore ancestral healing. The impact of ancestry on our lives has long been a topic of debate. People once believed in bad blood, that certain family lines bred bad people. Family heritage was of a potential spouse was met with much scrutiny. Royal lines were greatly valued while commoners were shunned. Later, we believed that while heredity did have some influence on our lives, we're not controlled by it. Today, there's increasing evidence that not only does genetics have a greater impact than we might think, but trauma and emotional damage is also passed down the ancestral lines. With us this hour to explore the ancestors, ancestral damage, and healing is Anuradha Dayal-Gulati. Anu is a certified energy practitioner specializing in ancestral and emotional healing and the author of Heal Your Ancestral Roots, Release the Family Patterns That Hold You Back. Anu came to the U.S. to earn her Ph.D. in economics and stayed. Her training in ancestral healing work helps people release their past and reclaim their power. Her website, healyourancestralroots.com. Anu, thanks for joining us on Mission Evolution.
Thank you so much, Gwilda, for having me. It's my pleasure to be here with you today.
Yeah, we should have a lot of fun. This is a wonderful topic. And I think one that's really interesting people at this point because the take on it has changed so much over the years. So you have a PhD in economics. How did you go from there to ancestral healing?
Oh gosh, Gwilda, I think at some level it was meant to happen. And when it did, it happened in a very traumatic way. I had a health problem and I had to go into the ER. And I came out thinking, I got to get back to life as usual, put this behind me and get going. But then one night, out of nowhere, I had to go back into the ER again. And I remember starting to feel scared, like really scared. But I came out. It was when I had to go in the third time, unbelievably, that I started to feel this sense of despair, this sense of hopelessness starting to sweep over me. And I could tell from the doctors that they didn't really know what was going on. But I had a very dear friend, and she came to see me in the hospital. And she held my hand, and she looked at me, and she said, Anu, how many times are you going to go through this? What is it going to take for you to change? And she was into alternative healing. And that's what led me to start exploring alternative healing. I literally willed myself out of the hospital. And that's how my journey began. I found this amazing Chinese medicine doctor, and I discovered flower essences. And those two things together, they just changed the trajectory of my life.
That's amazing. And I've heard that story so often. It seems like sometimes people really respond well to Western medicine, and sometimes whatever we have is just not reachable in that way, and we need to look elsewhere. So, what is certified energy practitioner?
Well, I actually trained and got the stamp of certification that everybody wants in flower essences. So I trained in Bach flower essences through the Bach Center in England and then through the US. That was 3 years. And then as I started to see clients, I began to notice patterns that were appearing in their lives, patterns that repeated across generations. And I couldn't understand why that was happening. And I started to see patterns in my own life. So that led me to explore ancestral healing work. And I trained with 2 people in Rhode Island for 2 years. And so that was a certification process in ancestral healing work and in doing that form of therapy. So that's why I guess in some sense I'm a certified energy practitioner. It's almost like getting a PhD, but in completely random subjects.
I understand. So you were talking about patterns. What are these patterns you're talking about? How'd you find them?
You know, I think one of the benefits of having trained as an economist was you start with a problem, and when you're looking for a solution, you're looking to see patterns that are coming up and to get to the root of what it is that you're looking at. And when I started to see clients, I started to notice that there were patterns that were appearing across generations. For instance, I had this woman who came to see me, and her daughter had moved to the West Coast, and she really wanted to improve her relationship with her daughter. But her daughter was pulling away. She didn't want to have much to do with her. And what I noticed is that this woman wasn't on speaking terms with her own mother. So there was a pattern that went from one generation to the next. And that's how, when you start to notice repetition of patterns, repetitions of events, experiences, that's when that's the transgenerational legacy that is affecting us. That's the ceiling or the burden that we're dealing with.
So where do these patterns come from? What do you think causes them?
In a lot of Eastern traditions, as well as the Native American traditions, our ancestors are not just our parents or grandparents, but it includes those who came up to 7 generations before us. And if you think about it, that's 252 mothers and fathers that need to have existed for you to be here today. So if there is something unresolved in the lineage, if there is something that they want to make amends for, then we take on a piece of what is unresolved to heal it. Because when we heal ourselves, we heal those who came up to 7 generations before, and we also heal those who come 7 generations after us, because we are the ancestors for those who come 7 generations after. So it is actually like a sacred task that we take on to heal our lineage. And that's when we start to notice the patterns and we start to shift them and we start to let them go.
So do you feel that these patterns are passed down genetically? That epigenetics is starting to show that, trauma is actually passed on to the descendants. Is this what you're talking about?
I think, the most famous study of the epigenetics of the mice and the trauma was where the mice had the electric shock and the cherry blossom smell released at the same time. And they found, even when 4 generations later, the male offspring had nothing to do with the male mouse who originally received the shock, uh, they were still afraid of the smell of the cherry blossom. So I think our response patterns can get encoded because our emotions are what really travel through the generations. The transgenerational burden is the energy of unresolved emotions. But I think patterns, the repetition of events and experiences, are the way in which our ancestors are, are wanting us to make amends and repair the family lineage.
You mentioned something that perked my interest. Now, I can see how if we do a correction here in this generation, it would affect our descendants. But how does it affect our ancestors? That's going backwards.
So, in a lot of traditions, the ancestral energy is hanging around us. When I started my training in family constellation work, they would say, you walked in with all your ancestors, and I'd go, right, like, I don't know what that means. But this ancestral energy is hanging around us. It's acting as a ceiling on our life. And that's why we experience blocks, the kind where if you want financial success, you want professional success, you want to have a relationship, and there's just like a block. And that's where the ancestors are acting as a ceiling on your life. But if we start to shift this ancestral energy, what we do is we allow them to lift into higher planes, evolutionary planes, soul planes. And from those planes, they can be more helpful to us. They are not, they're not so much of a negative influence, if that
Do you
makes
think
sense.
Do you think that we're simply changing our relationship to it versus them themselves?
Yes, we are changing our relationship towards them, and that's what allows them to shift. Because what is ancestral healing really? It is releasing the feeling that you're a victim of your lineage, of what came before you. So if you think of those 252 ancestors, they're like 252 chapters or 252 acts that happened before you were born. So you come onto the stage, the main stage of your life, and you don't know what happened before. You're not quite sure, but you have to play your part. So if we release the feeling that we're a victim of what came before, we can allow our ancestry to sort of be at peace and rest. And then we become more free to live our own life because we're not looking to blame someone. We're not looking to get something fixed because it cannot be fixed. It's past. We can only shift the way we carry the past. We cannot change it. And that's what gives us freedom.
That was the piece that I was looking for, is that you're not really literally changing the past, but rather your relationship to it, and therefore how you move forward and what you pass on to your descendants.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
that makes sense. So we have a lot of damage that goes on in our personal lifetimes, that we then carry, that causes part of that ceiling or that restriction. How can you tell if what we're dealing with that's holding us back is from our personal lifetime or from our ancestry?
That's a really interesting question, Gwilda. And at a theoretical level, is this mine or is this my ancestors? It becomes interesting. But at a practical level, for some of us, we don't know our ancestors. We don't know our ancestry. We don't know where they came from. All we can do is work with ourselves where we are now and heal and release that. And a lot of times, the longest healing journey is not with our 7 generations before. It's from here to here. It's from the head to the heart.
Hmm.
And it's acknowledging and saying, my father was this way, my mother was this way, or my grandparents were this way, but I can choose how I'm going to be. I can choose to let that go. Um, and in family constellation work, they used to say that only an adult can leave the family of origin, and that an adult takes responsibility for their life. So an adult can move forward, releasing the past and all its baggage.
I once heard it said, and we're about out of time in this segment, but I once heard it said, you don't go through the garbage, you just take it out. So is that kind of what we're looking at? Is, okay, here it is. It doesn't matter where it come from or where it came from. Let's just deal with it in our lifetime and move forward.
Yes, and that's what a lot of traditions do. They have these rituals to just pick up the garbage and take it out instead of going through it. Because a lot of times we don't have that much knowledge to go through it.
A lot of people, they might think they know their ancestry, but maybe they didn't, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if we try to dig around and find who our ancestors were before we can heal, it would take us a long time, wouldn't it?
Yes. So much is lost in migration, immigration, wars, all kinds of things. So much of our ancestry just gets lost.
Hmm. Yes. Well, there's another thing that I would like to pick up on the other side of the break, and that's how much of damage that comes through our heritage as far as our nationality, those lines, because I've
Mhm.
certainly seen evidence of it, and I'll bet you have too.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so they're, like the people from the Holocaust or Native Americans, what they went through the,
Hmm.
um, genocide, all of those things really do impact us, I think. And does that move forward as well?
Yes, because a lot of times, as long it's what's really hard, Gwilda, is letting go of the feeling of victimhood. If
Mm.
we can let go of the feeling of victimhood, if we
Well,
can move forward with
we're
compassion, we can.
we're going to have to pick up on victimhood on the other side of a commercial break. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org.
Question: what is the name of the unique blend of coffee you get that has been formulated by a neurologist, a neurobiologist, and a pharmaceutical chemist? Answer: you get Beautiful Mind Coffee, a unique coffee blend that tastes great and has herbal ingredients that your brain will love, and it is not just coffee, it's brainalicious. Dr. Rathbone, Dr. Jang, and Dr. Winslow, the scientific team that created Beautiful Mind Coffee, decided to collaborate on a coffee focusing on brain health. As for those herbal ingredients found in Beautiful Mind Coffee, Dr. Rathbone, Dr. Jang, and Dr. Winslow, utilizing their combined extensive scientific research background, worked with many natural and herbal products until the exact formulation that is found in Beautiful Mind Coffee was created. With a unique scientific formula not found in any other coffee being sold or served, Beautiful Mind Coffee is the only coffee blend that contains 3 herbal ingredients found to aid in boosting your daily mental clarity and focus. Every cup of Beautiful Mind Coffee contains scientifically formulated amounts of maca root powder, green tea extract, and American ginseng, all supporting good brain health. Taking care of your brain's health now can help delay or prevent the onset of cognitive dysfunction, including dementia, Alzheimer's, and more general memory loss as you get older, just by enjoying the delicious flavor of our roasted coffee and herbal ingredients found exclusively in Beautiful Mind Coffee. Did you know that cognitive dysfunction also refers to deficits in attention, verbal and non-verbal learning, short-term and working memory, visual and auditory processing, problem-solving, processing speed, and motor functioning? For more on Beautiful Mind Coffee, the 3 scientists who formulated Beautiful Mind Coffee, and more details on the 3 unique herbal ingredients in Beautiful Mind Coffee, visit www.beautifulmindcoffee.ca. Beautiful Mind Coffee is now available online at amazon.ca and amazon.com. To order Beautiful Mind Coffee, visit www.beautifulmindcoffee.ca today.
Hello again. This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. With us this hour discussing ancestral healing is Anuradha Dayal-Gulati. Her website, healyourancestral.roots.com. And we were just talking about how not only do we have damage or restrictions as well as gifts that come from our family line, but then there's also our genetic line, so that, if we're Irish or Indian or Native American or whatever we are, that they're, because of what the culture itself has gone through, some of that can carry forward. Would you speak to that a little bit for us?
I think that's so right, Gwilda, that there is unique things that we are carrying, burdens that we're carrying that are unique to our ancestry. But there's also another piece of this, when we heal ourselves, we actually bring into the world the gifts that we uniquely were designed to bring. And if we leave this world without healing ourselves, that void, that hole that we came to fill, stays unfilled. And, examples of that are Martin Luther King, who moved the needle in a huge way forward, Gandhi. There are Native American speakers and teachers now who are bringing their gifts and their wisdom into the world. So we see that, Viktor Frankl, there are people who come in, and when they claim their destiny, they move beyond their fate, beyond what they were born into. And it's like there's a U-shaped hole in the universe that they were born to fill, and they fill it. They heal not just their own sacred bloodlines, they heal the world, they heal the rest of us.
So how do we do this? How do we find the places that we have ancestral damage and correct it?
A lot of this begins with disconnection from ourselves. There's a disconnection that begins with ourselves. It begins in childhood and it starts to ripple out as we get older and as we start to live into the world. And healing ourselves requires us to heal that disconnection that we feel within ourselves. And one place to begin, I feel, is we are told so many times that we are rational beings. We are rational beings who have emotions. But if we flip it and we start to believe we are emotional beings who rationalize, then our emotions can take center stage. We can start to use them as a compass to go back inside and to heal ourselves. Because I used to think, why do Indian masters like sit on mountaintops or, just meditating? What does that serve? But when you heal yourself, when you bring peace inside yourself, you start to radiate it out. And that disconnection that we feel is where we are disconnected from ourselves, and negative emotions are actually pointing to that disconnection we feel within ourselves. And
So the
positive emotions
that's
are where we have restored that connection,
or where we didn't lose it.
or where we didn't lose it. Peace, harmony, contentment, love, there's that connection we have with ourselves, and then we can then connect out to others in the same way.
So how do we find those spots? What exactly does it look like?
You find that actually, researchers at the University of Glasgow said there are four primary emotions: fear, anger, sadness, and joy. And a lot of times we're cycling in the first three, but joy sort of subsumes a lot of the emotions of contentment, gratitude, happiness in other people's happiness. Just like the feeling I have enough, the compassion for others. So that is coming from that space of having accessed the inner contentment and peace. And I think there are a lot of practices that do that, like mindfulness, meditation. But I find this is where I tend to use flower essences, because I feel like they allow those emotion shifts to happen more easily and much more gently and with much less effort on our part.
So as I'm understanding it, you're using the negative emotions as a guidepost to the damage.
Yeah. So, for instance, let's think of the emotion jealousy. We think of jealousy as a really negative emotion. You might say, oh my God, she's always so jealous. She gets really jealous. But if you think about it, underneath that jealousy could be that feeling of sadness. I really want what she has. Someone might have tried to get it. So I really wanted it, but I couldn't have it. And I'm never going to have it. Or it's like, I don't even know what to do to have it. So underlying that jealousy is like, sadness, disconnection. So if you start to see it as a place to reconnect with yourself, to take steps forward, to have that sense of acceptance and compassion for yourself, then you can start to see that negative emotion as an invitation towards action that aligns you to your higher truth. And
So
that's forward.
you you use the essences to start to transcend this. Um, is this done by a frequency correction? Is that what's going on there?
Well, our emotions are frequencies. I mean, there's neuroscientists now who've studied that. Um, what flower essences are, they can be thought of as medicine from Mother Nature, which is vibrational. So, for thousands of years, dew was considered sacred. It was considered to have healing properties, whether it was the Egyptians, it was the Indians, or even, German mystics thought of dew as having sacred healing properties. But the thing is, it's really hard to collect enough dew. So in the 1930s, a British surgeon uh, discovered a way to recreate the healing, energetic, vibrational property of the flowers by creating these wildflower infusions in water and stabilizing them with brandy as a preservative. So that's how we get the flower essences. And they really are vibrational in nature, because there's no part of the flower in them, really. It's just the energetic property.
Does that, when we're doing drugs, they're standardized. But if we're working with flowers, they change from season to season. Is that change auspicious? Auspicious, like it co- keeps up with what changes that are going on the planet and what changes we need to align to?
So Dr. Bach, who was the original founder of the flower essences, he discovered 38 flowers that he identified and that he used, and those were considered sort of foundational. After him, there were other flower essence practitioners who, created different lines of flower essences to see how they worked. Not all flowers are considered suitable for essences. They usually are wildflowers. They are grown, where there's very little pollution. They're not the flowers from your garden, for instance. And there's a lot of case studies and casework on the Bach flower essences, which is widely available. They've been around now for about 100 years.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Proof is in the pudding kind of thing.
Yes.
Yes. So when we were talking about accessing ancestral damage and healing it within ourselves, is there also does this also impact us physically? Is there, outside of just genetic predisposition to cancer or something, is there also physical aspects that we have damaged has moved forward that we can correct?
I think, so as an energy practitioner, in the work that I have been trained in, we don't speak of the physical body because I don't claim to heal at the physical level. I work at the emotional level. But if you go to any body worker, they usually say the issues are in the tissues, because ultimately the energy sort of solidifies, gets denser and denser, and makes its way into the body. And so when we start to shift our energy, often, we start to heal at the physical level, because I guess our emotions are encoded in our bodies in some way.
Everything's connected, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So there was, who was it? Louise Hay that did a study, and her theory was that different illnesses in the body represented different spiritual or emotional illnesses. Have you seen that to be the case? Do you work with that at all?
So I am not allowed to say that I work at the physical level, and I don't like to say that. But I do find that when people start to heal emotionally and spiritually, everything about their life starts to shift. They really become happier, become much more contented. Their health does improve, like things improve. And, maybe if it's okay, I'm just going to share something about a client, just how she shifted her life. Um, this really lovely woman called me, and she was in her early 50s, and she called because she had a son who had quit his job, and she started to notice these family patterns. So she noticed, for instance, that she was a primary breadwinner in her family. Her two daughters were the primary breadwinners, and now her son was saying, "I'm quitting my job," and she was really upset. And as we started talking and working together, she discovered that her mother and her maternal grandmother were both the primary breadwinners. And so there's nothing wrong with the woman being the primary breadwinner. It was just that the men
It's
were not carrying
unusual,
their weight.
yes.
Yes. And there was some trauma in that family. Um, but what happened is she started to notice these emotions she was carrying, like anger, bitterness, rage. Those were the things she was feeling towards her father, her grandfather, her sons-in-law, and also wanting to control her son. And as we worked together, she started this practice of honoring her ancestors, letting go of those emotions, of anger, of resentment. She started to stop fixing her son, wanting to control him, and arrive at a much more peaceful place. And as she started to do that, she started to be much more appreciative of her sons-in-law as well, and her own family. And one day her son called her and he said, "Mom, I just want to let you know I've gone back to work. I don't know what came over me. I mean, she was thrilled, but I think the words, I don't know what came over me, that's what made me realize like the family energy field had shifted. The pattern had broken. And so when you start to do the work, I think it's amazing how much can shift just by honoring your ancestors and shifting your own energy.
So, from what you're saying, there is an invisible impact of our healing that moves to our descendants in this example. What is that connection there? What is that energetic? Because she didn't say anything to him necessarily. They didn't go into therapy together. There was nothing obvious that happened outside of her own process, her personal process. So, what's the mechanics behind passing that forward?
It's if we go back to the the male mouse and the cherry blossom smell, I'm just going to use that analogy. So transgenerational burdens is the energy of unresolved emotions. Um, and in her case, those emotions of anger, resentment, bitterness, shifting those emotions, letting go of the feeling that she was the victim of what came before her. So when she could let go of those emotions, it cleared the way for the generations to come. The baggage didn't have to be carried because it was just, getting passed on for somebody else to do the healing work. But when she claimed her healing space and the willingness to shift, it started to clear everything for those who came after because the baggage was over.
So the what was being held in suspension basically by a particular frequency became fallout when she corrected it.
Yes, that's how
Okay.
I see it.
Makes sense. Makes perfect sense. Well, it's that magic moment. We need to make another station break. Anu and I will return. So we're going to continue this discussion on the other side. You stay right there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org.
So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me. simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
Hi there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Our guest this hour is Anuradha Dayal-Gulati. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with your name today.
It's a mouthful.
It is. Of course, then so is mine. Anu's website is healyourancestral.roots.com. We were getting into how the mechanics behind how what we heal personally can then impact our ancestors or our descendants. Can it also impact other people around us?
I think when we shift, we start to radiate better energy. I mean, look at all the shootings that happen. It comes from a space of anguish, a space of so much personal pain that you're willing to take it out on somebody else defenseless. So when we heal ourselves, we actually, I think, become better people to be around with in our terms of our family, society, relationships, everything. Because, you know, a lot of times when people are struggling with unhappiness, behind it is the quality of their relationships, because we all know that there's so much research that says that it's the quality of relationships that really influences the quality of your life in
Isn't
terms of
that the
health
truth?
and happiness. Yeah.
Right. So, if we, one of the things that's come up over the years, clear back from when I was in college, and we won't talk about how long ago that was, but is the idea of nature and nurture. So, how much of this is energetically passed down through the DNA, and how much of it is passed down by the way the parents parent like their parents parented, and so on?
So much of us is inherited, Gwilda, in terms of our emotional response. And when you think about trauma, whether it's with a big T or with a little t, when trauma happens, it's the expression of love that's lost, the expression of love in a family. So the patterning that we're picking up um, is actually a response to that expression or non expression of love. The mother who was estranged from her daughter on the West Coast, she really wanted to be with her, wanted to connect with her. Sort of mother and smother can sometimes be only one letter apart. And the daughter wanted distance. So that's a patterning. It's a pattern response across generations. But how she was parenting the daughter might have been in response to how she was parented. So, we are in action and reaction phase, but going inside allows us to shift to a space of response rather than reaction.
Regardless of where it came from.
Yes, because we start to live more intentionally with greater awareness.
Amazing. So, is this a time in our history? We've seen, if we go back through our history through the 7 generations, it's been a very traumatic time. There have been wars. There have been all sorts of, genocide and everything going on. Do you think that this time that we're moving into now better supports healing those old wounds than times past?
I like to be optimistic. And I think, my daughter's studying history in school, and I'm always fascinated by what they're studying. And there's like an arc of history, which I feel does move us forward in terms of greater understanding. We move from imperialism to colonialism, from kingdoms to democracy to human rights to rights of women to vote. So I feel like if any point of history we look at is sort of we can feel like, oh my God. But when you look at the arc of history, I feel like it moves us forward. And so in some sense, we're also seeing so much more for the younger generation, much more awareness of practices of like mindfulness, meditation, compassion. We hear them sort of more aware of this. And so I think that's positive. I mean, I want to be optimistic that we are moving towards something better, bigger, brighter. Our mistakes only point us in that direction.
Do you think that this process of ancestral healing or self-awareness um, can help that process to become an evolution rather than a devolution, devolution, if you will?
Yeah, I think so. And I'm sure you feel that way too, Gwilda. I mean, even the show that you're doing, that the more awareness we have, the more we can shift. I feel even the word trauma has entered the lexicon in a bigger way. Like people are now more aware of the word. We're talking about having more trauma informed societies. So I feel like this is a positive shift that can, move us all, move the needle in the right direction.
So How can a person tell? Now, I'm sure the audience is saying, "Okay, this is all good," but how can I tell personally how much I'm impacted by ancestral issues and how much I'm impacted by my personal issues? How can you recognize that you are indeed being held back by these things?
I think, they're so closely intertwined, but there is, if you start to look at your life and notice, what am I struggling with? What is the thing that's really bothering me? Is it the lack of a relationship? Is it financial success? Is it professional success? What am I struggling with? And then start to notice, has this pattern been appearing in my life elsewhere? So, for instance, if I'm having trouble speaking up at work, I can't ask for the promotion I want, I can't ask for the promotion I deserve. Have I had trouble speaking up in my family? Is this pattern repeated somewhere else? Do I get overlooked? Do I get passed over? And then you could start to explore, who did this happen to before me? I think that question, who did this happen to before me, starts to open the window into looking at, where might this pattern have originated? And that starts to give you a clue as to what you're dealing with and where you can start to create change.
So it helps to identify it. It's not, because earlier we spoke about just taking the garbage out rather than going through it. But now you're talking about, well, getting introspective and really kind of doing some detective work. Um, Reconcile that for me.
So there's two things that happen. One is, as you start to build your intentional awareness, there are patterns that keep coming to the surface. I thought this was a one and done thing, but I noticed that patterns keep coming to the surface to be released. So this is an ongoing journey. um, where do we get the tools to support and resource ourselves? Because anytime change is happening or we are in the midst of transformation, we need to support ourselves. And I think things like journaling, things like being in nature tend to be supportive. But there was a Cuban medical anthropologist, Alberto Violdo, and some of your
Mhm.
listeners may have heard of him. He went to South America and he found these ancestral altars. And he said, in the West, we thought of these as ancestor worship. And he said, it's interesting because when you create these ancestral altars, they were done so that people knew where their ancestors were, so that they were not running amok, ruining your life. So when he said that, I discovered that something that we do in India, which is create an altar at home, which becomes a place to anchor the energy of the home. An ancestral altar anchors the energy of the ancestors in some way. And by stopping at your ancestral altar and praying for, not to your ancestors, but praying for your ancestors, you can allow their energies to lift up. If just simply accept them, the act of acknowledgement, honoring, allows them to really release their energy and shift up and move up, to higher planes of existence.
Do you feel like that practice actually puts us in a position to transmute? In other words, we've been talking about the ancestral damage and what we've carried, but there's also gifts hidden within that garbage can. Is this a way of letting go of the damage and receiving the gifts on the other side of that?
Yes, I think that's really nicely put, Gwilda, because in so many Eastern traditions where people didn't know the ancestors, didn't know anything, maybe, they had these fortnights where they would go and honor the ancestors, visit the graves, clean the graves, offer food, offer wine, offer, prayers. And these are ways in which we establish a link with what's invisible. And doing that was the idea of like lifting their energies and allowing them to move on. And I think when we do that, we can sort of stop that energy from hanging around us and shift it.
The unprocessed energy. But what about the gifts that they've carried? I mean, I have we all have a lot of gifts that came through our lineage and through our DNA that seem to be masked over by our regrets and our damage. But if we lift that, how can we better access those gifts?
Yeah, and so many times we just think of the burden or the challenges. We
Mhm.
don't really notice the gifts, which could be as simple as your smile, as your sense of humor, as your green thumb, as your ability to dance or sing, or your scientific mind. But when we start to acknowledge the ancestors, we start to accept the gifts of our lineage, we start to be more aware of them, we start to have more gratitude for what came before us. In a lot of Eastern cultures, and the Native American culture, there's the idea of respect. Respect creates a level of acceptance. It is what it is. It was what it was, instead of like trying to fix it. And so focusing on what you have received creates like an energy of gratitude and an energy of acceptance as well, which allows you to move forward.
There's some key words that we've been using here: gratitude, acceptance, and intention. How do those play a part in all of this?
I think they're interrelated, and yet at the same time, I feel 95% of our subconscious, they say, is running our life. We're just like using maybe 4 or 5%. The more intentional we are, the more we allow that subconscious to come to the surface, and not run our life. It's like, what is it? That green-eyed Hogan, the Hulk or something, whatever it is, those monsters that they have like in the Disney shows, sitting inside us and running the show. But if we start to live more intentionally, then we can start to notice not just the challenges, but the blessings. We can start to live from that space of gratitude, because we start to notice that we are being supported actually in many small ways. Synchronicity, noticing synchronicity is a way of noticing how we are being supported, as opposed to just, seeing the glass either as empty or half full even.
That synchronicity is another key word here, isn't it? Is being able to, isn't synchronicity what was used for divination a lot?
I think so. I'm not so familiar, but I think we think of the universe as speaking to us through synchronicity,
Mhm.
and so we make meaning out of it. But I think it's important to not force synchronicity into like forcing, like, oh, the relationship I'm in with, he shares these characteristics with my father, so I think it might be meant for. But synchronicity, when you allow it to happen, it creates a sense of wonder, this sense of magic, as opposed to forcing something into like, I think it's synchronous, and so this is how it's going to be.
And
Then we
interpreting
miss the
it,
message.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yes, yes. Well, amazing. Well, we'll need to pick up on synchronicity is a very important thing with all of this, I believe, because don't you think the ancestors speak to us through synchronicity in a way?
Yes, I so much. And I
Yeah.
think, even my clients, when they start doing the ancestral healing work, photographs will appear.
We'll have to
People will
pick up
call.
we'll have to pick up on synchronicity because we're just about to run out of time in this segment. But Anu and I will continue. So you stay with us. This is missionevolution.org.
Question: what is the name of the unique blend of coffee you get that has been formulated by a neurologist, a neurobiologist, and a pharmaceutical chemist? Answer: you get Beautiful Mind Coffee, a unique coffee blend that tastes great and has herbal ingredients that your brain will love, and it is not just coffee, it's brainalicious. Dr. Rathbone, Dr. Jang, and Dr. Winslow, the scientific team that created Beautiful Mind Coffee, decided to collaborate on a coffee focusing on brain health. As for those herbal ingredients found in Beautiful Mind Coffee, Dr. Rathbone, Dr. Jang, and Dr. Winslow, utilizing their combined extensive scientific research background, worked with many natural and herbal products until the exact formulation that is found in Beautiful Mind Coffee was created. With a unique scientific formula not found in any other coffee being sold or served, Beautiful Mind Coffee is the only coffee blend that contains 3 herbal ingredients found to aid in boosting your daily mental clarity and focus. Every cup of Beautiful Mind Coffee contains scientifically formulated amounts of maca root powder, green tea extract, and American ginseng, all supporting good brain health. Taking care of your brain's health now can help delay or prevent the onset of cognitive dysfunction, including dementia, Alzheimer's, and more general memory loss as you get older, just by enjoying the delicious flavor of our roasted coffee and herbal ingredients found exclusively in Beautiful Mind Coffee. Did you know that cognitive dysfunction also refers to deficits in attention, verbal and nonverbal learning, short-term and working memory, visual and auditory processing, problem-solving, processing speed, and motor functioning? For more on Beautiful Mind Coffee, the 3 scientists who formulated Beautiful Mind Coffee, and more details on the 3 unique herbal ingredients in Beautiful Mind Coffee, visit www.beautifulmindcoffee.ca. Beautiful Mind Coffee is now available online at amazon.ca and amazon.com. To order Beautiful Mind Coffee, visit www.beautifulmindcoffee.ca today.
Welcome back. This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. This hour, our expert guest is Anuradha Dayal-Gulati. Her website is healyourancestralroots.com. And Lou, we were just getting into something that's pretty interesting, and it's really transcultural, and that's the using synchronicity or observing synchronicity or acknowledging synchronicity to get messages from the spirit world or from our ancestors. How can we do that more consciously?
I think it goes back to intention and intentional awareness, because it also goes back to a sense of belief and a sense of faith. And you use the word transcultural because at a certain level, all spiritual faiths across the world have sort of the same ideas and the same even signposts and markers of the spiritual journey. And just simply recognizing that when there is faith, there is a power that's taking care of me. And then you start to notice little things, because you're actually almost, faith is then part of, again, your intentional awareness space, or your field of vision expands when you tend to have faith. You see things from a different perspective. Sorry. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Are you telling me then that unless we have faith, we probably don't even notice or recognize the synchronicities? They just kind of go by?
I think we become perhaps much more aware of them. I'm speaking from my personal experience that the more aware I was of my faith, the more I was aware of synchronicity. And it was really when I started doing the ancestral training work, because there was so much awareness of synchronicity in that 2-year program, that I started to become much more aware of it, become much more mindful of it, so that when it happened, it had this like, oh my God, had a sense of wonder, the sense of magic about life.
I've had so many people mention to me when a dear parent passed or something, there would be some kind of sign that was very particular to them. Like one lady's father loved cardinals, okay, and it wasn't really the season for them. It was just starting to be the season for them, and they hadn't seen them all year. But once her father crossed, the next day, it's like she sees a cardinal, it sits out there, and it looks at her until she sees it, and then it flies away. And to her, that meant he's checking in to see I'm okay and letting her know that he was. Are those the kind of things that we're looking for in synchronicity?
Yeah, I think so. And I love that story. It's so beautiful because our ancestors, our loved ones, want us to know that they're okay. They want us to feel their love, even if they're not in this space. And, if they haven't been able to express it, there is this feeling of wanting to make amends. I would see in the ancestral work we did, um, it was like as if there was a reaching out from those who had gone, who wanted to reach out and make amends. And if someone had lost someone they loved, there was a reaching out to go on to the other side. And sort of the presence of synchronicity or the awareness of synchronicity then starts to make that space less painful.
Let's shift gears just a little bit. There's a couple things. One, we have a lot of adoption that goes on, and the people that are adopted, historically and probably still now, are not allowed to know who their parents were or what their lineage is. It's just like it's erased. So they don't have any direct hook in knowledge-wise of their ancestry. Um, but then they're adopted into a different family that has their own ancestry, their own lineage, their own damage and gifts. Do you feel that the making of a family like that impacts the person that's come into this family, that they're now given access to the gifts and the restrictions of the ancestry of their adoptive family?
Well, if we believe there are no accidents, then something is playing out there that is probably more than we can see with our, human eye and limited perspective. However, I do feel that when there is adoption, it doesn't mean that the biological family doesn't exist. It still exists, even if they're not visible, even if they're not seen. But it's like the elephant in the room. And so making space to just simply acknowledge the biological family, that they exist, that they gave birth, and that perhaps, if they could have, maybe they might have kept the child, but if they couldn't, there was perhaps a contract written between, before the soul came into this lifetime. Because the idea in the East is that your soul karma is what you came to heal in this lifetime, and the family karma is the family in which you came to heal it. So it could be biological, it could be adopted, but the family is the family in which you came to heal your soul karma.
So if a person is adopted, um, can, say, for instance, building a family altar for their original lineage, can that help heal them? Because there's certain damage that goes along with being adopted. I mean, that's one of the things that I see patterns in, is people that have been adopted have these particular patterns or restrictions or damage that are all in common. Do you think that can be healed by reconnecting with your birth family through an altar?
I think so. Well, I have seen it happen, where reconnecting energetically has brought a lot of healing. Um, because maybe underlying is the feeling of the loss of expression of love, the sense of rejection that, of having given me away. But connecting energetically actually brings peace to um, the energy field of the family. It brings peace to the family energy field, and it can shift that feeling that you hold. And sometimes, through the presence of synchronicities, things might happen. Things can come to your to your attention, even in dreams, even through journaling. A lot of information can come and make itself known to you when you start that healing journey.
I know so many people that have been adopted are just really driven to try to reconnect, to find out where they came from, to find out who their parents were. I'll bet this is part of it, is that unresolved piece.
Yeah, and I think you talked about Louise Hay, but there was also the woman who started the idea of the morning pages, where you write the artist's way, Julia Cameron. And the idea was that you journal every morning, 3-4 pages, and allow yourself to free write. And I have seen in that writing process, sometimes your ancestors also speak to you. Information starts to flow because you allow yourself to not judge what is coming. And so you can access the space of information flow like a download. So that's another practice that can provide healing.
It seems like in this generation, in the recent generations, we've gotten more and more and more away from the elders sitting around the fire sharing their wisdom. Okay, now they sit in a nursing home and nobody wants to hear from them. Can this also help? Can we literally access wisdom and information this way?
You mean from
the ancestors?
Ancestors?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, totally. I think so, because the interesting thing about being in the ancestral healing was, they used to say, the ancestors come, they're ready to be present for the healing, but it's like we all learned, we all grew in wisdom, even if they were not my ancestors, because the ancestors want to teach. And sometimes when people share stories, I feel like their ancestors are teaching me. So once you open yourself up, the ancestors, like you become part of something bigger, and you're guided and blessed, really. I mean, that's what we really want. We want the blessings of our ancestors.
And let go of the damage and pick up the gift.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So it's about that time in the program, Anu, when I have to ask, what is your mission?
My mission came out of being in the ER, because it made me recognize how important hope is in our life, and that when it's gone, this sense of despair and powerlessness sweeps over us. So my mission is to make sure that people know they are never powerless, that they can create change and they can create the life they want. You are never powerless and you're never alone. There's support everywhere.
Including from our ancestors.
Yes, from ancestors, Mother Nature, the universe.
How much do you feel that the family lineage and our, healing our ancestry and our ancestral damage, how much is it seems like the family is kind of responsible for aligning the child with the flow of love? Is that what we're healing here? Is our ability to channel love into the world?
Yes, and that's a tall order. But I have this quote on my desk that says, "It is only love that can heal the wounds of the world." And I think, our pain teaches us compassion. It teaches us the fragility of life, and opens our hearts, because, we get used to living from the head. But if we live from the heart, if we see from the heart and feel perhaps with the mind instead, we can live a much richer, happier life.
In mass, right? Not
Yes.
just one of us, but the whole enchilada. So if you were to see anything change, the first thing to change globally, to start this moving forward in a big way, what would that be?
I think it would be really acknowledging that our pain stems from a disconnection with ourselves. And so if we can restore the connection to ourselves, if we can make everyone realize, especially the children, that your feelings have value, they are valid, and tuning into connecting with yourselves. And, I think I just went to a talk the other day, and he talked about happiness and all of the things about happiness, that material success does not give you happiness. I mean, we do know that happiness is an inside job, but the three things that are the ingredients of happiness are faith, family, and community. And so recognizing that we perhaps need to bring back, just like we're bringing trauma back into the discussion, bringing back, what does faith look like? What does it look like for you? What does family look like for you? Can we bring back in values of respect, compassion, understanding into the family? Perhaps we can start to shift how we live.
And those are the things that we've kind of gotten away from: faith, family, and community.
Yes, and they are critical for happiness.
How do we're just about out of time period, but what in closing, what advice can you give to people? What's the first step to really start engaging this?
I think the first and the easiest and cheapest way to do it is to just simply start journaling. If you want, you can journal to a higher power, to your future self, to your higher self, but just the sheer act of journaling, because emotion is energy in motion, and that energy needs a place to go. So journaling, just, even in a little black notebook, you can start allowing that energy to have a place to go. It is the cheapest and most valuable therapeutic tool we have at our disposal. And no one needs to read it.
That's the good part. Unfortunately, Anu, we are out of time. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Gwilda. Thank you so much for having me.
It's been my
It's
pleasure.
my pleasure.
Our guest this hour has been Anuradha Dayal-Gulati. She's a certified energy practitioner specializing in ancestral and emotional healing, and the author of Heal Your Ancestral Roots, Release the Family Patterns That Hold You Back. Her website, healyourancestralroots.com. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to enjoy past archived episodes, please visit www.missionevolution.org. And be sure to join us right here next time as this mission continues, bringing information, resources, and support to our evolving world.